extraordinary is just really, I feel like it's a call for the believer. And really that's just a call to simple living and being intentional. And so it's not creating new programs or structures or burden or law. It's really going in freedom. Where can you express and live out the Jesus that's in you to the world that is desperate and longing for hope and love and truth and acceptance? And those are all the characters that are embodied in him.
Welcome to the Extraordinary Lives podcast, where we talk about lives that go beyond the ordinary to the extraordinary, with the extra being Jesus. We'll be encouraged with amazing stories and helpful insights from the lives of ordinary people who have that extra, that supernatural difference that only Jesus can give. I'm your host, Ellen Bennett. Thanks for joining us. Hi, everyone. It is so great to have you guys here with me today, and I'm excited to welcome Dom Nuncio from Seacoast Community Church in Encinitas. He is our worship pastor. Is that your official title?
My official title is Pastor of Worship and Families.
Ooh. Nice. Little extra added in there.
Yeah,
that's great. Okay, so I would love to just start off with, I love Dom. I'm so grateful for you being here. You have such a heart for worship and bringing everyone into knowing God, experiencing him. But then also you just have such a great heart. You are very welcoming to everyone. And by welcoming, I mean you really let them in. And you are attentive, you're caring, and you're just very open to just being real and authentic. So I love that about you.
Thank you. I love this podcast already.
And just a quick plug, you have had a podcast with Matt Carlson, and I would definitely recommend those episodes called
Grow, Love, Live.
Grow, Love, Live. All right.
Wherever you find podcasts.
Good.
Yeah. Thanks for having me this morning.
Thanks for being here.
Of course.
All right, I'd love to hear, first of all, since you are a pastor of worship, what is worship and why do you have a passion for it?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, I started in ministry when I was right out of high school. So it's been 24 years now.
Wow.
And I've kind of held every position you can think of in the church. I think everything but lead pastor I've been in the church.
Wow.
And so I started out because I was a professional musician. Since I was 14, I was playing in bars and clubs. I had record contracts with major labels. So I thought I was just doing that. And when I became a believer, I was like, can I use this for the church? I guess. So I just started playing music, and, you know, you play guitar and all of a sudden you're a worship leader. That's kind of how it was as a 18-year-old guy just walking with the Lord. And I was confused that people weren't drinking, and I was confused that people weren't applauding after each song. And but after I got kind of used to it, my definition early on was just, oh, you play music, we sing, and that's worship.
Got it.
And as time went on, and just started studying, I went to school and grad school, and just reading doctrine and books and different philosophers and theologians, and all of a sudden my definition for worship expanded beyond the musical component. So actually now I'll use, like, on Sunday, it's the musical worship component, but the service is a worship service.
Yes.
And then what we're doing in our lives is worship, and we actually are worshiping more scattered than we are gathered. And so definition, like, real rudimentary, but Romans 12:1, you look at that. And so you see Paul just write this beautiful, masterful letter. And the first 11 chapters, he's just setting up the depravity of man and the beauty of God and the gift of grace that can be ours, and the salvation that comes from Christ and Christ alone, and the newness that comes in there, and the condemnation that goes away because of that. And in view of all these beautiful things, he actually, at the end of 11, gives the doxology, just this beautiful piece of who God is. This is true about him, right? So this is true about us, but this is true about him. So therefore, in response to all that, this is what worship looks like. It's our everyday, ordinary life. That word right there, even latero, it's our service. So some translations will say it's our reasonable service.
Yes.
So it's our It's our everyday. I love the Message paraphrase by Eugene Peterson. He says, take your everyday, ordinary life, your eating, your sleeping and drinking, and present it before God. And so it's really breath by breath, moment by moment. We're just feasting and celebrating and reflecting on the Lord and his goodness. For those in Christ this morning, we go, we're made new and we're his and we're saved. And it's not because of what we've done. It's because of what he's done. And it's just this constant, no way. I can't believe he's that good. Yeah, so we're just in awe of him. And then that's our worship. So we get to do it together to encourage you. Ellen, I want to sing this truth to you, to remind you, and I need to hear you sing it to remind me. And now we get to worship. And then the other piece that's really fun is for worship, for me, definition. You look at John 4:24, you see Jesus with the woman at the well, and he says, those will worship me in spirit and truth. Yes. And so he uses the word proskuneo, and John uses it in the book of Revelations as well. And proskuneo just means to bow to one that's greater than you. It's reverence, it's awe. But literally translated, it's like a dog licking his master's hand. That's how you come to me. And it's just, if you had a dog before, you just, the dog just, just can't get enough to just, if it's a cuddler, it just sits in your lap, it can't stop licking you. And you're like, enough already, come on, stop. And that's just the Lord's relationship, just saying like a dog licking his master's hand, like you're just going, there's nothing greater, there's nothing better, there's nothing sweeter. Squirrel. And then you come back to it, and then you come back to it and like, wait, sorry about that. Something shiny was over there. I'm back to you. So long answer, but that's sort of the biblical model that I see for worship. And music is a sweet component of that, but it's just a component of a larger lifestyle framework of how we live.
That's awesome. I love too how you always bring in scripture with the songs that we sing. How do you go about picking your worship music?
I'm constantly looking for songs that are theologically true and robust and enough that they will sing every time of the week. Some songs are so cyclical where you're just like, well, we can sing that song once, and they have their place. When I first started leading worship, those were called the special music songs, right? It's the offering and it's the special music. And that would tie in maybe to where the communicator is going that morning. So certainly I look at that. So when Ryan or Matt or myself or whatever are communicating, where are we at in Scripture? What are themes that are coming out? Sometimes like, there's 10 songs that are here that we could sing literally what we're going to preach.
Sure.
So we're going to sing the gospel back to each other. But certain things, certain categories I'll look for, just is there gospel truth in there? Is there true things about who Jesus is, his nature, the Spirit? Is there a triune statements that we can talk about Father, Son, Spirit in there? Like, are there things where there's a call to action, a call to remembrance, a celebration? So you kind of think of an old hymnal. They had songs for the whole sum of life. If you have a hymnal, I collect them and you can open them and go, there's a song about childbirth. There's a category for funerals. There's a category for marriages and all the different parts of life. And so I try and think of like a hymnal for the modern age. There's certain songs that will touch different topics. And then in there, it's like, is it true about who God is? Is it true about us? Does it teach identity? And I want people thinking, man, even the best message, I can't remember the points by Tuesday, but I'm in the shower Tuesday morning and a song comes in my head. And so as time has gone on, more and more, I go like, man, is that true? If that music is such a powerful tool, if that's stuck in my head, is that true about me? Is that true about God? And so sometimes I'll even change words where I'm like, I don't think that is actually correct.
Wow, I like that.
Like I love the melody.
Is that
It's totally. I don't make any money off of it. But it's just certain things where it's like, oh, that's not true about us. Or I think if I just change that one phrase, that might be a little bit more true about where we're at theologically. And, it could work in a different setting. And then the last thing I think is I think about the room. Number one rule of broadcast is know your audience. So what I would do at a camp, I work with Hume Lake a lot. What I would do in front of 1,000 students is different than I would do with a room of pastors or a group of marrieds or a retiree kind of community. Yeah. So because we're an intergenerational families at Seacoast, there's a delicate balance of that. So I want my kids are in 5 years will be the church, which is weird to think about, So my son's 16, my daughter's 14. Wow. So in like 5 years plus or minus, like it really is their church and it's the handoff. I don't need convincing about Jesus, but I need reminding all the time. But there's a whole generation coming up beside me and behind me that I want them to know. And I want them to feel like this gospel truth is translating for them and their generation. And so musically, maybe that means we stomach it as a generation above them. But theologically, can we grab a hold of those handles and go, that's true about Jesus? And I love that this generation is making it sound like Harry Styles or whatever, you know, like it's palatable, but it's truth for their generation. So who's in the room? So I picked songs around that. And then basic things. Are they singable? There's so many songs. Yeah, there's so many good songs out there where I just go, I love listening to this. And sometimes I'm wrong. Like Oceans, if you remember that song.
I do.
I thought it was the worst congregational song ever. I was like, this is so dumb. I loved it, like in terms of listening, and wow, it's so experiential and thematic. But it just felt to me like this is so hard to duplicate. You have to have such a talent level, and it's long.
Yeah, it is.
And
good point.
Yeah, so just all these different things. But the church took off with it. So I was like, well, I guess I have to do Oceans.
Yeah, that's right.
So, yeah, some of the categories, that's how I think through things.
That's great.
Yeah.
I love how you put together so many different elements. So I always notice there's usually a hymn or a song in there that's going to have some really good theology in it, you know, maybe a take on an older hymn along with the newer. And I also love just finding out about new worship songs out there just by what we're singing. Sometimes I'll even email you and say, what song was that?
Yeah, I love it.
And then put it on my Spotify. So that's
Look at you, so hip.
Yeah, of course. All right. Well, speaking of your family, I would love to find out about your family of origin and then how you came to know the Lord, and then also about your wife and kids now. So go for it.
Yeah, it's a big one. Okay. So family of origin, born and raised San Diego.
Right.
I grew up downtown Little Italy.
Oh, I forgot that.
Yeah. So
I love that so much.
Yeah. So downtown Little Italy, for those who know, it's kind of hipsterville now, but it was not when I grew up. So in the 80s, it was just kind of up and coming. But that's where we lived. Grew up there. My parents were exploring being missionaries in Mexico.
Okay.
And so on their missionary practicum, that we were part of a church called Horizon.
Okay.
And so they were part of one of the first school of evangelism. So they were doing a practicum in Mexico, exploring, is that where our family was going to go?
Okay.
So as a baby, I was sleeping on rooftops in Mexico, and you know, villages coming and making chickens for us and all that kind of stuff.
Goodness.
And then so Spanish was like the first language that I was learning in preparation for that. Dad's Hispanic, all those kinds of things. It was kind of a scary time. Mom was a young mom, 24, 25 with 2 kids, and we're seeing a lot of crime in front of us.
Wow.
Don't really feel great about raising my babies in this. So they came back to San Diego, and then grew up there. Parents ended up splitting, and then they both remarried several years later.
Okay.
And so my mom landed as a single mom in more of the South Bay. So I was kind of going between both houses in there, but still great family, grateful for them. 1 sister, 4 parents, you know, so it was complex and all that. But overall, faith was still a component in there. I knew about Jesus. There was a thing called Skippy's Playhouse where it was a sock puppet coming out of a jar of Skippy's peanut butter. Oh, no. And that's how I really first heard the gospel, with, you know, outside of my parents talking about it. So I think I responded as a young man, but then my life really didn't look like anything about like Jesus.
Okay.
Especially going into middle school, I became proficient in music, and I discovered that was like a superpower. I became much better looking to the opposite sex than I actually was. And I was like, this is amazing. Like, you know, as a 13-year-old, you're like, do that, you know?
Yes.
And so, again, proficiency in that, faith just really went to the back burner, if there at all. So I would say I was a fan of Jesus, but not a follower. So I knew Scripture. I knew there was I'm a feeler, so I knew how it felt, sort of, you know, invoked certain emotions in me, but really was not interested in that. And then through a series of events, I had 3 record contracts from 16, 17, and 18. And I was seeing the lifestyle that LA kind of brought, and it was just not fun. I was seeing my drummer OD. I was seeing my bass player. You know, there's just every stereotype that you can think of. That is the industry. And so as a young man experiencing that, it just left me wanting. So I remembered those feelings of being a young kid and sort of the background and formation that came, and then where I was at. And those 2 things were just not ideal. And so I came to faith my senior year of high school on my own. I was in the shower, and I just got to my knees and started praying. Something to the effect of I just remember the things of you, Lord, and if you'll have me, I'm yours for the rest of my life. Here we go. Wow. And then that was it. And there was, you know, obviously events of people were praying for me or old youth leaders or whatever, but it was on my own in a shower. And so I still pray, in a drought, I go to the steam room and get to pray in there and, So that's where faith came. And then all these years later, just been following him and never thought I'd be in ministry. I thought I was going to be a banker or a college professor. Those were sort of 2 tracks. And yet here I am.
Okay. I've got 2 quick questions for you.
Go. Anything.
All right. What musical genre were you into? And I'm curious about, it seems like it would take a lot of maturity, unless it's just desperation of what you're seeing around you, to not just want that fame and that acknowledgement and people just loving what you do, that recognition.
Yeah.
So tell me I'm sure it was God that could have even woken you up to that, but anything else you want to add about that?
I think from the maturity standpoint, I don't know how much of it was maturity and how much of it was the Lord, or how much of it was just there was enough ability to project out. I'm a strategic mind, so I could kind of project where things were going. And there was a level of dissatisfaction. There was a level of guilt and shame, and which aren't language of the Father, but they were what I could understand. I knew that I was going against sort of this foundation of what my family had sort of laid out for me. So there was constant guilt or shutting that down of going like, gosh, I know this is so stupid. Like, look at him in the hospital. Like, I don't want to be like that when I grow up. But the fame thing, before banking or professor, I thought my identity was in my instrument and what I was doing. I remember giving a speech in high school or middle school. I can't remember, maybe high school. And I had to have the guitar in my lap. It was like my voice, and my identity was rooted in there. And I'm so thankful it's not. Like, that could end today and I'd be more than fine. But yeah, man, it was hard to think like, no way, like this person's going to manage us and this major label and all these different things. And I'm going to score movie soundtracks for movies and all these different things that were like, as a 16-year-old, you're going, amazing. As a 42-year-old, they sound amazing in some ways. But that's right. So that was hard. And I think, there just was probably the combination of people praying for me, the Lord wooing me, enough strategic mind that he'd give me to go like, this is not going to end well. When I became a believer, I got another contract offered. I prayed about it, which was something new for me. And then I decided no. And so I called them. The manager at the time, he cussed me out on the phone and said, we'll never call you again. And they didn't. And that was such a make or break moment for me where it was like, wait, Lord, what? Like, what's happening right now?
Yeah.
It was saying death to a dream.
Yes.
So super hard.
Burning bridges.
Yeah. In terms of musical influence, my household growing up, I was just talking to a young man yesterday about this at church. And for me growing up, and maybe for you, Ellen, there was a communal listening experience in the house. The parents had a record player with speakers, and the music would fill the house.
That's right.
So whatever dad and mom were listening to, that's what we all heard.
Yes.
So it was the Beatles, it was the Police, it was James Brown, it was gospel music, it was country music, it was rock and roll. It was everything under the sun was being pumped in our house. Dad was a musician, so there was a sense of you're going to hear everything. And so there was a palette that was growing that was so diverse that I could literally vibe with anything.
That is really cool.
So, and that's still true. Some people are like, I only listen to these 3 genres, but I'm like, no, I'm liking still quite a bit of music. I can listen to hip hop. I can listen to country. I can listen to classical. I can listen.
Great.
There's an appreciation for them. Some I want to listen to longer than others, but as a musician, I enjoy the artistry. And so there's something I can always learn from that, or, in my head, I'm geeking out and going, what's happening tonally, chord progression, modally, what's happening right now. And I love just, some of it, just to be honest, this is bad. Yeah. But I'm like, oh, this is not for me.
Yeah.
This is for a new generation, but I would say 80% of my kids' playlist was already on my playlist before.
That is really cool.
Yeah. So I love it. And that's true of my parents. My parents are still teaching me music and taking me to concerts, and
that's so fun.
So I think that's just part of the family DNA.
Yeah. I can relate to that. I do have a funny record player story.
Yeah, let's hear it.
At Christmas, my mom would play this record album that had I Saw Mama Kissing Santa Claus, but I didn't know that Santa Claus didn't exist. So I didn't realize that was the dad that the mom was kissing. And it really disturbed me. It's like, wait a minute. Why is mommy kissing
Santa? Why is Dad okay with this?
Isn't that hilarious?
That's amazing.
Oh my gosh.
Sorry, there is no Santa Claus. Listeners.
Yeah. I'll have to put no kids listen to this one. That's right. It's so funny. Oh, that's great.
I think you asked about my family.
Yes.
So I've been married 19 years. Next week we'll celebrate.
All right.
And met Tara in high school.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, we were both in show choir.
Okay, great.
So I was in the band, and she was one of the singers and dancers.
Wow.
So wearing her sparkly dress and jazz hands. And so we dated before Christ and after Christ. And so very different experiences. So we were on again, off again, sort of unhealthy high school relationship.
Sure.
And then I got saved and broke up with her. She would tell the story that I broke up with her 2 weeks before prom. So yeah, just all the feelers went,
yes.
So I'm still making up for it 19 years later. But we eventually came back together, married, and then had kids within 2 years. And so we have 2 kids, Asher, who's a junior this year, and Amalia, who is a freshman this year.
Wow.
So
I remember them as babies.
I know.
Crazy.
I was talking to a young mom who used to play with your daughter when I was a worship leader back in the day, and she has a fiery baby with a loud scream, and we're just like, I know that scream. We lost hearing from ours too. It gets better.
So funny, and I know who you're talking about. That's so funny.
Yeah, she's great.
She is awesome.
Yeah, shout out to Sydney.
Yes, Sydney. Love it.
Yeah, so that's our family, and still surrounded by all our family here in San Diego. And we moved back about 6 years ago. We were gone for a decade, and that was great. We look at it with a lot of fond memories. It challenged us in our marriage and parenting, and just forced us to be together.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of sweetness in it.
That's good.
Yeah.
I'm curious. I know this isn't Tara's podcast, but how did she become a believer or follower of Jesus?
Yeah, so she grew up going in the same church that I did. We didn't know each other at the time. And so she had sort of that similar experience of coming to faith as a kid, maybe preteen.
Okay.
And then just there wasn't a connectedness to the church. There wasn't a connectedness to believers. So it just got drowned out and lost in the woods. She's a 2 on the Enneagram. And so she just kind of had a hard time saying yes to what she wanted to say yes to, and found herself just getting caught up. And so she would tell it that I invited her to a concert, but I was leading worship at a church called The Rock here in San Diego. It was when it was still at SDSU. So it was a set up and tear down thing. Miles was our college and high school guy at Horizon, and then he went and launched a church.
That's right.
And so we went with him. And so I was leading worship there and invited her to come. She said it was a concert, and I was like, I don't remember saying that, but her story. Dom invited me to a concert, and I was like, I know it's church. And she was living with roommates.
You can't fool me.
Yeah, she was living with roommates at the time, and her atheist roommate said, I'll go with you. Tara, having that foundation, but then totally not living like anything, she said, oh my gosh, well, my atheist roommate needs Jesus.
Yes.
So she went. Her roommate ended up leaving, and something, whatever Miles was saying, the Holy Spirit just grabbed a hold of her. She tuned out the whole room and the message. And that night broke down like, Lord,
that's amazing.
Coming to you. So, and then she quit everything cold turkey that she was doing. She was a total party girl, and she just that night just said nope. And so from there, I was the only Christian she knew. We started hanging out, started her connecting her to the church that I was at the time. And so she just started building friendships and relationships and growing in her faith. Eventually we were just like, what are you doing next week? What are you doing tomorrow? What are you doing for the rest of your life? And so
that's great.
Yeah. So yeah, incredible. Just the journey of watching her grow in her faith. So fun.
That's so neat. I just got to see her yesterday, and she's just such a beautiful lady and so talented.
She is. Wow. Yeah. It's kind of annoying.
In a good way.
In a good way, of course. I'm not annoyed with her at all.
You might owe her a date for that.
I'm fine with that. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, good. And so I would love to know a little bit about some God stories, ways that you've seen God at work. Anything really stick out to you, either from the past or recently as well?
Yeah. I think our God stories are vast, and they require us to slow down. Like I'm talking to a friend, and an old mentor, he wrote a book called Unhurried Living. And it's just that idea of...
Hurry up, Dom.
Yeah, I know. So I'm going to just...
What'd you say?
I couldn't hear you. I was slowing down. So with this sense of stopping and pausing and noticing. Like God's always at work,
Yeah.
but sometimes I forget because I'm just not looking. So we're seeing him in a lot of different things. Right now we're working with a teenage boy who wants to start dating. We're seeing God at work in there because he's willing to talk to us. We're able to share our past mistakes of both of us, of just to say, gosh, we want something different for you. It's actually what we've prayed for you since you've been in the womb. You know, we've been praying for your spouse. We've been praying for you in this time. And so we're just seeing God at work. That doesn't mean it's easy or comfortable all the time.
Right.
But we're seeing that, you know, we just had a conversation this weekend with him. We had him by himself for 2 hours, which is unusual. And we just got to talk and speak truth and life into him, encourage him, challenge him. And I just like looked at Tara and I'm just like, afterwards, I'm like, I can't believe how big our kids are, first of all.
Yes.
I can't believe he's inviting us in. We wouldn't have done that at this age with our parents. And I just like appreciate the spouse that God provided for me, that we could be so united. And it's just really fun. It's a new angle to just see God, like, look how cool you are providing. When I was a 23-year-old getting married, I didn't know.
Yeah.
I just like, she's cute and she loves the Lord. Great. You know, not what kind of mom is she going to be in 20 years, you know? And so God at work in there, God at work in my son's life of really challenging him on what's important, his core values.
Yes.
What part does faith play for him? How has he seen us live our marriage relationship out, and what encourages him in that or challenges him in that? Similar things for our daughter, but we're also just seeing God at work in small things. We love our neighbors and we get to know them and invite them into our life. And it's small deposits. Like, I don't think I've ever done anything out of the ordinary. I know not the extraordinary. I would say from my vantage point, I haven't done anything that would be like, oh my gosh, you know, we did something so substantial. It's just been small deposits over years of getting to know our neighbors' names and celebrating hard things and good things with them, and to where we've built up trust. You know, I really love that First Peter passage of be ready to give an answer for the hope that you have when asked. And I always just think that presumes relationship. And like, they're asking because they see something about the way that we interact with our kids or as a spouse or with our neighbors. And so they've come to us and asked for really hard things. I mean, basic things right now. We have our neighbor across the street, her washer's out. And so she's come for the last couple of weeks and is just doing laundry. And so in that, she's sitting in our garage and Tara's talking to her, and the husband's a professional soccer player. And so now last night we got invited to come and watch games and all those kinds of things. And it's just like small things. And our daughter would love to watch her kids. And Asher was cleaning out his closet, had all his old Nerf guns. And so we showed up with a big bag on their door and said, they have a little, 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. It's like, dude, Nerf guns. And they were just like, what? So just little things like that of trying to think missionally and seeing God. I'm excited for that one. The next door neighbor to us, he's come out of his way to talk to me multiple times and ask for prayer, and talk to Tara. His wife has postpartum and Tara had that. So she's able to talk to her and minister to that, and invitation to different things and home and table. Just all those little things. They seem so like just ordinary, but I just see that God's in it.
God's in it, yes. I would love to hear your explanation. What do you mean by living missionally? But it also sounds like you're willing to take out the time and to really be authentic, but also invest in the neighbors. I mean, it can just be so easy to just say, oh, I'm too busy for this or that. Whereas really, maybe that's your real purpose. I mean, God put you in this neighborhood. You've got these people around you. What is he doing? What's he at work at? Yeah.
One pastor friend says, we're driving in a box. We push a box to open a box, to park the car that we're driving in, close that box, to sit on a couch and turn on a box. So you can just kind of never talk to anybody. You can disassociate from everybody, never have to see your neighbors. And so it is uncomfortable. I've been late to things.
Sure.
Tara's called me and gone like, you were just supposed to go to the store, which is like half a mile away. Where are you? And I'm like, I'm still in the driveway talking to this guy. And so sometimes there's boundaries, but sometimes it's like, no, this is an important thing.
Yeah.
And so the unhurried living of, I'm going to just slow down enough to just be with this person.
I love that.
And it could be 5 minutes, or sometimes it's longer. If it goes super long, it's like, we should hang out.
Yes.
Can I take you to lunch this week, or come over for dinner, or, sit in our backyard. So missionally, I think that's it. Like as a missionary, if we were dropped into a city that you'd never know, you just are taking time to be attentive of what's happening. What are the cultural rhythms that are happening here? Where are people going? What are people talking about? What do they value? So some of that is that of thinking missionally, like, so where I'm at strategically, God has me. I just firm believer in that. You know, our story of even where we live right now, it's like we never even saw the house. We moved back to San Diego in faith, and this was the house that they said yes to. So God, you provided literally this house.
Yeah.
We've never even been here. And so who's around us and what are we doing? It's not just about us and painting the walls and getting a cuter couch. It's like, no, I think these people around us are here for something. And then also on mission, like we just believe that every believer has been invited into the mission to make disciples of all nations. The imperative in that passage isn't go, the imperative is make disciples. And so discipleship, again, means relationship and time and teaching and training and relationship. So we just see that as that's what we're here for. They have different expressions. We're not talking about vocation. We think of calling. Well, the calling for every believer is that, you know, there's specific vocations that could be expressed. But if I was a barista, I'm still on the same mission. And so we think of that as there's a book called Family on Mission for Missional Living. And they talk about family or mission, family and mission, or family on mission. And so the first is I'm either saying yes to mission or I'm saying yes to my family. So if I say yes to mission, it's to the detriment of family. If I say yes to family, it's to the detriment of mission. If it's family and mission, I'm kind of in perpetual exhaustion because I always feel like I'm never giving enough to the mission or to the family. So I'm just spinning plates and I'm always feeling like I'm failing. And then family on mission is just the little things. It's saying in our everyday stuff of life, right? So it's that idea of worship even. In our everyday stuff of life, we're inviting people into it. And it's not sexy. It's not flashy. It's, do you want to jump in the car while I go get milk and let's talk on the way? Do you want to come over and you're going to come to our messy house, but we're going to fold laundry together because we're just going to talk and your kids can come and play. And we saved old toys. We learned that from a family here, the Buchanans. They were so great with our kids. You know, when we'd go over to their house when they were little, they'd pull down all their old cars from their boys and stuff. And we're like, no way. So we were just like, we file save, you know, we saved all the old cars and Batman's toys. And so let's pull that out and family on mission, you know, I don't have to add extra to my program of life. I don't have to add anything extra. This is just what we do. And we're going to have invitation. We're going to talk about what matters to us. We're going to be curious about your life and want to know just what you're doing here. You didn't ask anything profound necessarily. It's simple questions that get people talking. So can we do that around a meal? Can we do that around laundry? Can we do that around the everyday stuff of life? So
I love that. That's great. Thanks for sharing that. Sounds like a real mindset to be in. And then I love that you're always looking for ways God is working and just wanting to be that ambassador for him, but in a real way, just living life with other people, not with some kind of agenda, but you're just loving him.
Yeah, I'm not trying to proselytize anything. Yeah, it's just, but I really do believe that Jesus is the way, and I really believe what he cares about most is souls and people, and he's made them in his image. And so, man, I want to be about what he's about, you know? And so I look at him just being with all kinds of people in scripture, and he's pointing them to something. And so I want to do similar, and it's great. It's so amazing what being curious about people does. A simple smile and conversation to my barista, or how's your day going? Sometimes they're like, no one's asked me that all day long, you know? Or they're kind of taken back by you're going to talk to me. So I'm going to take the 2 minutes, and it really isn't anything. It's just like put my phone away and don't text for a minute. You know? And
in our day, that really is extraordinary.
Oh,
it is different.
Yeah, for sure.
And I love that when we're talking about family on mission. Sounds like that's even what Asher was already thinking with those Nerf guns.
Totally.
You know, I'm on mission. I've got this. I don't really need it. What can I do with it? Not just try to sell it, really thinking of his neighbors and those around him.
Yeah. We hope it makes small deposits in our kids and and even in our neighbors. Gosh, if you're doing that with your neighbor, then your neighbor is probably going to do that to the person next to them too.
That's great.
That's our hope. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course.
All right. Well, anything else you want to add? Anything that you want to make sure our listeners know, or anything that you've been learning that you'd like to impart?
Well, I think just that, probably building on that theme. I love listening to your podcast. You got the best podcast voice ever. I've said it.
Thank you, Tom.
Yes. But But I love your heart and everybody you're interviewing. It's extraordinary. It's just really, I feel like it's a call for the believer. Mm-hmm. And really that's just a call to simple living and being intentional. And so it's not creating new programs or structures or burden or law. It's really going in freedom. Where can you express and live out the Jesus that's in you to the world that is desperate and longing for hope and love and truth and acceptance, and those are all the characters that are embodied in him. And so the encouragement is just to take that first step of, instead of driving into your garage, maybe park outside and talk to your neighbor for a second, or as you're taking your trash cans to the curb, just talk to them or bring their cans up for them, or just little things like that. In the grocery store, instead of going to the self-checkout, stand in line, take a few extra minutes, and get to know the cashiers there. You've probably seen that person on a weekly basis for years. So get to know their name and what they're about, and do they have kids, or are they single, or what are they studying in school, and just remember them, little things. Sometimes I just have a note in my phone, or we have a whiteboard in our house, and I'll go, what's our new neighbor's name? John, and what was her name? Oh man. Just so we can know and be praying and be thinking about him, and the next time I see him, go, John, how's it going? How's it going?
Great. That's a great pointer.
Just little things to just be curious about people, so that someday you can have an important conversation, because life will happen.
Yes, definitely.
Yep.
That's great.
Yeah, that's my encouragement.
Well, thank you so much, Tom, for being with us. And I just really, truly appreciate your heart. And now I know our listeners will too. So I'm so excited to be able to introduce them to you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I love it.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us. This is Ellen Bennett with the Extraordinary Lives Podcast.